right, hi everybody. David Fogel, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, back with you for another Symphonina Foundation podcast. I'm joined today by conductor Dane Lam, music and artistic director for the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, and many other titles we're going to learn about. So today I get to say aloha, Dane. How are you?
Aloha, David. I'm very well. I'm in Hawaii at the moment and have had a lovely morning by the ocean and thinking about Mahler. We're performing his Ninth Symphony next week, so it's
Wonderful.
fairly all-consuming.
Yes, for you and for the audience too, and I'm sure
Yes.
for the performers every time Mahler comes to the stage. But I want to thank you for the great performance that my wife and I got to see while we were visiting in Honolulu in December. We went to your holiday show, and it was a tremendous show. I want to thank you both not only for the orchestra's performance and the vocalists and the guest performance, but also for your outreach to the audience, which I greatly appreciated. You really brought everybody into the performance, and we were all there with you. And I think it's what's really needed in symphony music generally, but particularly in a performance like that. So mahalo.
Oh, not at all. I completely agree with you about that. I think it's so important and it really transforms the audience's experience when the conductor just involves them in the process a little bit and lets them into his or her mind and into the music. So I always make a point of talking during every performance, really.
When you're going to get up there and introduce Mahler 9, what do you have in mind to bring the audience into Mahler's world?
I think Mahler is one of these composers where his biographical details and also what was happening in his socio-cultural context, it really informs the music. And it does with many composers, of course, but what was happening in Mahler's life, this last symphony completed, the Ninth Symphony, his health was deteriorating, he'd lost his daughter, his marriage was on the rocks. And that's not even taking into account the fact that the whole social order of Europe was beginning to crumble, these cracks before the First World War. And so it all informs this deeply heartfelt, personal, unique symphony. So I mean, I don't pre-plan too much what I'm going to say. I think it really helps to be a little off the cuff and
Hmm.
and authentic in that way. But I will certainly give a few little listening hooks for the audience because it's a long symphony, isn't it? It's, over 75, 80 minutes and just a few things in each movement for people to sink their teeth into without talking down to, we do have some very seasoned concert goers amongst our audience and amongst our subscribers, but to really if somebody walked in the door for the first time, they would have a few little hooks, a bit of scaffolding upon which to hang their understanding of the music.
Yeah. You have a concert coming up on the 26th, I think, January. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Whatever the last Sunday in January is, and yeah, that's going to be our Mahler 9, which is we're very excited about. Since I started here at the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra, I've managed to program a Mahler symphony, at least one every season. So we're going to go through them all and hopefully perform for the first time ever, the eighth in Hawaii in
Really? Okay.
future seasons. Well,
All right. Never
that's
been
my
done before.
dream.
Okay. All right. Very good. If people want to get tickets for that, we do have some fans actually in Honolulu. If people want to get tickets for that, where would they go?
They can go to our website, which is myhso.org,
Hmm.
and all the details are there for this upcoming January concert as well as our February concerts and all through the year.
Sounds good. Listening to you, I can't help but notice there's an Australian accent. And as I said to you before we got started, my mom was born in Melbourne, so I'm very familiar with the Australian accent. But you were born in Brisbane. Brisbane's a great city. I love Brisbane. How did you get started in music?
I grew up in a family that loved music and that loved classical music. Both my mum and my grandma were both
Hmm.
pianists, and and so I did grow up casually attending symphony performances or ballet performances. And happened in the end, I started to learn piano as a child. But it was really only when I went to high school, which was a fantastic public school in Brisbane, that offered this incredible music program with a great depth and breadth. There were ensembles, every morning and every afternoon, from choirs to bands to orchestras to jazz bands to big bands, percussion ensembles. I mean, the list went on and on and on. And that's where I really became conscious of the fact that people actually did music for a living. I mean, I'd seen orchestras growing up my whole life, but I never really connected the dots until that point.
Mhm.
So that's sort of what got me started. And at that time, as I was finishing high school, got really interested in conducting. And the Australian government, through an organisation that was then called Symphony Australia, had this quite visionary conductor development program where they selected a group of promising young conductors, and we got to learn conducting really with the professional orchestras around Australia under the guidance of their chief conductors, of their guest conductors. So I always say it was like learning to drive in a Maserati.
You can get in trouble if you did that, you know?
Yeah.
You wrap it around a light pole or something. That's
You
you
know
gotta be
what?
careful.
You know if something goes wrong as a young conductor with the Melbourne Symphony or the Sydney Symphony or the Queensland Symphony, if something goes wrong, it's probably your fault. So you
That's
learn
true.
very quickly
Right.
how to steer the ship, as it were, mixing metaphors.
Yeah. I read somewhere that you learned piano, clarinet, saxophone. Sounds like what I learned growing up too, although clarinet's very hard for me. I gave up on that one, but you pursued it all. I think you went to Juilliard for your master's, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it was in the mid 2000s, I suppose. James DePreist was the conducting professor at Juilliard at the time. It was really an incredible education. We had there were three conductors there for the 2 years, and Maestro de Priest only ever took in about three conductors every 2 years. So there was a lot of attention. Every week we got almost an hour. Each conductor got almost an hour with a lab orchestra made up of Juilliard students, and they all got work study money. So it's basically beer money, really,
Yeah.
to play through this core repertoire. And we had to learn and be prepared to conduct from any part of four symphonies every week.
Mm.
Maestro de Priest's whole philosophy was that if, as young conductors, invariably, the first opportunities that you're going to get are last minute, are for jump-ins, and so you had better have some kind of overview of the repertoire. Now, it wasn't really you couldn't study everything as well as you could as you'd like to if you're preparing four symphonies a week, but you did quickly learn how to make it work, and it was a really good education. And then coming back to these symphonies later on in my studies or in my career, it's always easier to heat them up a little bit than starting from scratch.
Yeah. You have multiple positions. So you're artistic director at the State Opera South Australia. You're also principal conductor and artistic director of the Xi'an, if I pronounced that correctly, Symphony Orchestra in China. How do you get around? How much time do you spend in Hawaii versus Australia versus traveling all over the place?
Yeah, so mostly I divide my time now between Honolulu and Adelaide, where the State Opera South Australia is based.
Hmm.
Um, my wife and my young son live in Honolulu, and that's where our primary residence is. And then we spend quite a bit of time in Adelaide as well. I have been conducting in Xi'an since 2014 and really worked with the musicians in Xi'an to build this orchestra basically from scratch. I came in the second year of the existence of this orchestra, which is the resident orchestra in this Xi'an concert hall, it's an incredible acoustic. It's a fantastic acoustic. And so I was there a lot for 10 years. And so since starting these other two positions in Hawaii and in Adelaide, I spend less time in China now.
Okay. All right. And do you still have concert series that are going on in parallel then between Adelaide and Honolulu, where you're making sort of a commute between Australia and Hawaii?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the advantage of, well, what distinguishes symphonic music from opera or ballet, for example, is that generally we put together a concert in less than a week. We might have the first rehearsal on Tuesday or Wednesday and have the performance on Saturday or Sunday. It's really quick. Whereas for an opera, because there's staging, because there are costumes, because there are sets, it takes a lot longer. Generally, for an opera rehearsal period, it's going to be at least 3 weeks, plus a run of performances that can span 2 weeks or more. So when I'm in Adelaide, it's for chunks of time, it's for blocks of time, and for symphonic concerts, I can sort of come in and out.
Yeah, okay, that makes good sense. One of the things that I saw online too was you made an effort to bring the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra to a middle school in Hawaii. I think Prince David Kawana Nakoa Middle School. And again, that's part of like it really resonates with what we do at the Symphonina Foundation. And I just wanted to ask you what your experience was like bringing the orchestra to the middle school and how the middle schoolers liked it.
Oh, we felt like rock stars coming to the middle school. It was wonderful. And actually there was a really poignant aspect to that whole thing because our composer in residence, Michael Thomas Fumai, was a student at Kawana Nakoa Middle School. So it was a great homecoming, as well as a great way to demonstrate what is possible with hard work, dedication, a bit of luck, some passion. But I see the work that we do in schools, the work that we do in education as really essential because I'm pretty comfortable saying actually that music education in general has been watered down in most countries, including Australia, including the United States. And I think we're already seeing the impact that that has on audiences and on attracting audiences for symphony orchestras, for opera companies. I'm not saying that you have to be extremely erudite and learned to appreciate a symphony by Beethoven or by Mahler or an opera by Puccini. This music speaks to the soul, to the human spirit. It is universal in that sense. But it's I'm talking about exposure. If you're not exposed to this music at a young age, then there is some kind of stigma and there's a barrier that needs breaking down. So the more we can get into schools and expose people to this music early, expose kids to this music, they realize that actually it is for me. It is for everybody. It speaks through time, it speaks through space, it speaks through nationality, and it is a really, really visceral experience. And I think these kids they sense that. They sense that instinctively. So the more that we can do in schools as orchestras, as opera companies, as so-called classical musicians, then that's going to be better for the art form. And I think for society going forward.
I totally agree with that one. Do you find I'm guessing that the school system is very welcoming to have you come out and make a presentation and play and all that, but I'm sure it's also like you can't do it every day. You have an orchestra and you got to get people to go actually do it. So
Well, yeah.
what's the right balance for you?
Generally, we can make, not to go into the minutiae of orchestra management, but
Yeah.
there are generally services, a service being a rehearsal or a concert, that we can allocate in between our performances in the concert hall to go and do an outdoor concert or go and do a schools concert or go and do chamber concerts. Um, you would think that schools would be very welcoming. Uh, but in my experience, actually, there is so much pressure on principals, on teachers to tick so many boxes and deliver so many curriculum items. I was absolutely gobsmacked that when we offered to go into some schools, they weren't interested.
Hmm.
And I think it basically rests on the principal of the school. There is so much, really are demands, and I do understand that. But to have a high level professional orchestra come into your own school is invaluable. And so we were just thrilled to go into Kawana Nakoa Middle School, and they really, really embraced us. And it was a really important part of their day, of their year. They were all there and they experienced it. So we're doing more and more with partner schools, with like-minded schools, and we're always willing to work with any principals, any teachers, any level of curriculum to give something unique and something lasting to the students.
Yeah, we appreciate that. If you were going to look out 5 years from now, what would be the outcome you'd like to see for yourself?
I have a little dream that I would like to embed music into. We start off with one school as a kind of pilot program that grows. In a previous life, I was living in the United Kingdom, in the Northwest, in Manchester and Liverpool, and I was peripherally involved with a program that the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic is still running to great success called In Harmony. And that in turn was based on the El Sistema system from Venezuela. But In Harmony essentially adopted a small school in quite a low socioeconomic area, and every single kid was given an instrument. They were given regular lessons. They started every day with singing. And the transformation that occurred, not just in arts and culture for these kids, but in academic performance, in social cohesion, not just for the kids, but for the whole community, because the parents were involved. And that program was backed by the Liverpool Philharmonic. These kids learning on open strings had the opportunity to perform on stage at Philharmonic Hall with the RLPO. And so ever since I've started here in Hawaii, this is something that I've really wanted to do. Of course, it requires resources, it requires buy-in, it requires a lot of time and planning, but it's still something we're working towards. And if one school can embrace it, then it can equally be rolled out to many, many schools. And I think we would see a real transformation of outcomes for those kids and in turn for the whole community.
I totally agree with you, and if there's anything we can do to help with that, just let us know. Dane, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I've got a website, www.danelam.net, not com. But I'm also very active on Instagram, especially. My handle is Traveling Conductor.
Okay.
And people can get in touch with me there as well.
All right, Dane. Thank you so much. We're going to listen to some more of the great music you've conducted on the way out here. And I do mean it. If there's anything that I can do or the Symphonina Foundation can do to be of help to you, you just let us know.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.